Oh, hey guys, what's up? It is the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite TV shows, and today I still can't leave the apartment, but I think I will do that tomorrow, leaving the apartment, going out in the streets. It's actually pretty clear outside right now. Rather safe in this district. Anyway, I'm free. I have nothing to do. So, yes, I just finished watching a TV show and I'm going to be talking about it, and that is Lost, Season 4. Lost is a TV show created by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. It's about how the airplane Oceanic Flight 815 crashed onto an island and the passengers had to survive. And this island is not just any island, it's really, really, really strange. There are polar bears, smoke monsters, century old pirate ships, lots of hidden bases and stations, hidden villages with sonic traps, and I'm only scratching the surface. I haven't even mentioned the curse sequence of numbers, the electromagnetism, the invisible mystery entity, and the secret powers this island gives, as well as the 3 or 4 groups of people who landed onto this apparently non-existent island many years before the airplane crashed. So if you haven't watched seasons 1 to 3, I don't recommend you to watch this review, or maybe, I know it's a little scummy, but you can just skip to the end and see the score if you're curious, or the description. There's a score down there as well. Honestly, season 1 of Lost is near flawless in my opinion, and season 2 is a bit slower as it explores the others, but it's actually more interesting. Season 3 might be even more crazy with the others, the Dharma Initiative, the Rescuers, as well as more Desmond, and Season 4 digs deeper into the rabbit hole as it mostly shows flash forwards instead of flashbacks. Episode 1 is titled The Beginning of the End, and we're only halfway through the 6 seasons of Lost, and I think the episode is pretty good. It shows some really interesting flash forwards with Hurley. There are some key information that are revealed, but I don't want to spoil them. But basically, only a certain number of people actually left the island at the end, and that number is small. Other than that, in present day, a great divide occurred. Jack wanted to get rescued, but John thought the rescuers wanted to kill them, so something interesting is bound to happen. Then it's episode 2, Confirmed Dead. The 4 rescuers have landed, and we are shown 4 very simple flashbacks of the rescuers plus Naomi, so that's 5. The rescuers are Daniel, Faraday, Miles, Charlotte, and Frank. But John Locke's team captured Charlotte first, and something happened. Apparently, the rescuers weren't there to rescue the survivors. They were mainly there for Ben, and even though I wish the show would keep the rescuers mysterious, what the show did was still very satisfying. Also, this is a really unlikely team of rescuers. Dan was a physicist, Charlotte was an archaeologist who speaks a lot of languages, Frank was a pilot, and apparently Miles speaks to the dead. He's kind of an asshole character, but he's also really interesting because he can speak to dead people. Anyway, over to episode 3, The Economist. And now we get some more flash forwards for Saeed's character. There was even a twist at the end of the episode with Saeed's flash forwards, and it was actually really unexpected. I was like, no way. Definitely no way. Also in the present day, Desmond and Saeed take off in a helicopter with Frank to look for the ship. We also see more conflicts between John's team and Jack's team, especially what happened in the barracks, which is okay. And even though this isn't really all that eventful of an episode, I'm still pretty pleased with it. Episode 4 is called Eggtown, and it's even more uneventful, unfortunately. In the flash forwards, we see more of Kate, which is strange, considering that Kate decided to leave the island even though she was a fugitive and a criminal. And also in present day, we finally see what Miles wants to do with Ben, and it's probably not what the rescuers had intended to do anyway. So yes, while there are great moments in the episode, it's certainly one of the more boring ones. Then we have episode 5, The Constant. And I'm going to be honest here, this might be my favorite Lost episode ever. Yes, I do like my season finales. The Exodus, the Live Together, Die Alone, and the Through the Looking Glass. But this episode itself, while it isn't an ultimate ending to a season, it's certainly the most unique, the most beautiful, and the most entertaining. This episode itself has a plot point strong enough to be a full feature film. And a good one at that. I mean, it's a Desmond episode, so it's bound to be good. I don't want to spoil anything because once I've told you the premise of the episode, it's all revealed, and so I'm giving a spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the episode, go to the comments. There are timestamps. When Desmond, Saeed, and Frank were flying to the rescue boat on a helicopter, there was a storm, and suddenly Saeed went back in time from 2004 to 1996, where he was training as a soldier in North Glasgow, Scotland. Yes. Desmond is back in time again. We've seen that before on the episode Flashes Before Your Eyes, but on this episode, Desmond keeps on jumping back and forth from 1996 to 2004 when he had the memory of 1996, meaning that he completely forgot about the plane crash, the island, the Pearl, the Swan, the others, the rescuers. So Daniel, who was on the island, talked to Desmond in present day through the phone and instruct him to take a train from Glasgow to Oxford to look for the Daniel back in 1996. That's the moment when I know that this episode is going to be a fun, entertaining, and suspenseful time-traveling episode. And an uncontrolled one. What's great is that Daniel is basically the only person who can save Desmond. Anyway, in Oxford University 1996, Daniel told Desmond to find a constant before his brain fails to handle the timeline jumping and has an aneurysm. So Desmond needed to call Penny in both timelines so that Penny can be Desmond's constant. Desmond kept on jumping back and forth in each jump, and he knows a bit of information that may help him in either the past or the present, and that's brilliant writing. Anyway, Desmond ended up with Penny's address in 1996, and Penny told Desmond her phone number, so when Desmond returns to 2004, Desmond can call Penny, and I was begging for Penny to pick up the phone in present day, and when she did, it was truly powerful and emotional. This scene alone shows how powerful love and life can be. It's just one of those scenes that makes you want to live and makes you want to love in a very powerful and convincing way, and that's beautiful. That's powerful. I love it. And of course, this episode also makes us ask more questions like why did this happen, or why does time work differently on the island and off the island, and who are the rescuers anyway? Then it is followed by episode 6, The Other Woman, which is in my opinion one of the most uneventful and boring lost episodes to date. And it's super underwhelming in comparison to the previous episode as well. This episode explores the character of Juliet and more about her affair with Goodwin, which made Ben jealous, and Juliet is literally one of the most boring characters in Lost, in my opinion. We also see more of Daniel and Charlotte. They were doing something weird. I like Daniel's character, but Charlotte seems really salty and angry all the time. It's almost a little annoying. But what I like about this episode is that it explores one of the 9 Dharma stations, secret hidden Dharma stations. That's only explored once in this episode for some reason, and that station is called the Tempest. There are 8 other Dharma stations, and at this point in the series, 3 of them are still unexplored by us viewers. So it's pretty cool. Afterwards, it's episode 7, Yeon, and it's a pretty solid follow-up to the previous episode. It isn't super eventful, but it has a few plot twists that actually successfully surprised me. Again, the flash forwards, they are amazing in that they reveal the distant future, and instead of answering our questions, it makes us question even more. But I guess what I like about the flash forwards the most here is that the endings for a few characters are revealed. And these endings are bittersweet and somewhat tragic. It's kind of poetic too, how some characters completely betrayed their arc or simply did a 180 degree after they leave the island. There's a plot twist that also wowed me a lot. In present day, not much had happened. The events on the rescue boat are the most interesting. The whole Jin forgiving Sun thing is just okay. Episode 8 is titled Meet Kevin Johnson, and I don't want to spoil much about the episode, but this episode is about the man Kevin Johnson? And how did he end up on the boat whom Desmond and Saeed met? There are only flashbacks this episode, but all of them are actually very interesting and refreshing because we see life outside of the island in a new perspective. The ending with the sudden twist is fantastic. I wouldn't call it a twist though, but it's definitely unpredictable, and I was left in shock. Then it's episode 9, The Shape of Things to Come, and oh my gosh, I didn't expect this episode to be this dramatic and intense. I like that sometimes we think Ben is lying and is trying to manipulate people, but then sometimes he is telling the truth. When he said that the rescuers were going to kill everyone on the island, I was kind of skeptical too, but of course it's lost and it actually happened. The captain of the rescue team, Kimi, came to the barracks and attacked the people there. And boy, it was close. There's even a death scene that almost kind of reverted our expectations, since usually scenes like this in Hollywood movies tend to not go this way. But this just further complicates Ben's character and makes him even more unpredictable. We also see some really interesting flash forwards concerning Saeed and Ben, which answers some questions but makes us ask more. How did that happen? How did he get there? Why did he do this? Episode 10 is called Something Nice Back Home, and it is another slow point in the season, but it's still fairly entertaining. Basically, Jack needed an appendix removal surgery, and John, Ben, Hurley split ways with Claire, Aaron, Jack, and Miles. As far as the appendix removal plot point goes, it's okay, but it's the flash forwards that really hook me in. It's the first time that the idea of everybody actually died on that island popped up, proposed by Hurley himself. And then later, Jack even saw his own dad as hallucination back in the real world. And that's kinda creepy, but more importantly, thought-provoking. And you could almost say that they may have died and are in a parallel universe. Then it's episode 11, Cabin Fever, and you can already feel the tension cooking. And this episode takes some amazing risks when it comes to storytelling and weaves some more complicated webs that raised more interesting questions. So I actually accidentally watched episode 12 before episode 11, but episode 11 is still an enjoyable watch after episode 12. This is actually kind of funny but eerie because one of the plot points explored in this episode is how time works differently on the island. Something that happened on a couple of episodes ago are caused by what happened on this episode. The future kinda affected the past, or maybe it's just that time is earlier on the island. Of course, judging by the title, this episode involves a cabin as well, and everything about the cabin is just so intriguing. How to find it, the people in it, what Jacob wanted. The ending is certainly shocking and super entertaining as well. I love the intense scenes on the freighter boat, and the flashbacks actually date back to the 50s and the 70s when John was born, when John was a teen, and later in the 90s, I think, when John was hospitalized, and one of the characters who showed up in the future showed up again, but in the past. Spoiler alert. But yeah, that's awesome. If there's one critique is that the actor who plays John when he was a teen is not that good. But what boggles me even more is the character of Richard, who seems to have an impressive ability. And now I might have a theory on who was the leader before Ben, or who was the leader before Ben. Anyway, I'm certain who's the leader after Ben. Over to episode 12, which is the first part of the 3-parted finale, There's No Place Like Home. It's funny because I watched this episode by accident before I watched episode 11, so I kind of skipped a couple of plot points, but I still managed to figure out what was happening. Like all the finales, this episode gets super complicated really quick. Basically, Kimi's team is here and they wanted to kill everybody on the island. Jack and Sawyer decided to look for the chopper. Hurley, John, and Ben looked for the orchid, one of the Dharma stations, because they wanted to save the island. Yes, Desmond and Saeed decided to save all the people on the island and bring them onto the boat, but when Saeed returned on the island, Kate told him about Jack and Sawyer looking for the chopper. So Saeed and Kate ran after Jack and Sawyer. So we have 4 storylines going on at the same time, and all of these storylines almost go head to head with one another, being counterintuitive to one another. Thus, it gets kind of suspenseful. There are also a lot of flash forwards in this episode, and we kind of jump back in time in the flash forwards to see what happened after the Oceanic Six was rescued. So we begin to piece all these flash forwards together to arrange them in a chronological way, and it's a lot of fun. And overall, it's a promising first parter for the finale, and you know what? I'm giving a spoiler alert. So I have a few things to discuss. First of all, if they can move the island, then what is the island and why is the island? Does it really exist? We all know that it could very well be somewhere in the Pacific Ocean along the way between Sydney and LA, but it was also in the Caribbean Sea and the west coast of Africa at some point, also in the middle of the Mediterranean also at some point. Otherwise, Echo's brother wouldn't end up there. I also really hope that the Oceanic Six actually came back to the real world and that they didn't just die, otherwise it would have been unsatisfying. But at that point, Nadia hadn't died yet, so it's possible they actually lived and escaped. And then it's the last two episodes of the season, also the last two parts, and as usual, the last season finales are incredible. I can say that the season 4 finale is wholesome and final in one of the three storylines, but the other storyline is dangling on a gigantic cliffhanger. This season finale is also way more action-packed and way larger in scale. Maybe not as mysterious as the season 1 finale, but certainly adventurous. A lot of impactful death scenes too, as well as revelations that are actually shocking. But now that we have learned more about the island's properties and the flash forwards, the lines between being alive versus being dead is so blurred and uncertain, and I really love that. I'm giving a spoiler alert again. Yay. On the second part of the finale, we jump back to the very, very, very future, probably the farthest in the future we have seen so far. We realize that the coffin that future Jack visited belongs to Jeremy Bentham's. But back to present day, there was a huge fight between Kimi's men and Ben's men. Ben returned to the Orchid and helped John move the island. Meanwhile, Jack, Kate, Sawyer, Sayid, Hurley, and Frank went to the chopper and left the island and went for the freighter. That's very close to the Oceanic Six, except with Sun, but without Sawyer or Frank, so that's how we know we're close to the rescue. Back at the Orchid station, Kimi entered the station and Ben killed him. Turns out he has a detector attached to his arm so that once he dies, a bomb on the freighter sets off and everyone on that boat also dies, and that actually happened. The boat did blow up and everyone did die. Yeah. Yep. But before the boat blew up, the chopper landed and lifted off again, and just in time, Desmond and Sun also made it to the chopper, but Jin didn't. So Jin and Mike died, unfortunately, which actually raises some questions because Jin's actually alive in the future, right? Or maybe not, because on that Yeon episode, maybe it's like one of the sun flash forwards are flash forwards, and what supposedly Jin's flash forwards are actually flashbacks, but I would like to think that both of them are flash forwards and somehow Jin was alive and somehow Jin made it in the future, but maybe not, who knows. Afterwards, right before the chopper made it back on the island moved and disappeared. Yes, the chopper ran out of fuel and everyone on it jumped off and landed on the water with a floating raft. Meanwhile, Daniel and a bunch of others are also floating in the middle of the sea. But later on, the 8 survivors were found by Penny's boat with a turn of surprise, and a week later, Frank and Desmond stayed on Penny's boat as the Oceanic Six arrived at a nearby island in like Indonesia or something and got rescued, which perfectly connects with the latest flash forwards on part 1, which then goes back to the beginning of episode 1 of season 4, and then it goes all the way back to the flash forwards of the last 2 parts. Jeremy Bentham is dead. Sayid found Hurley and took him somewhere safe. Kate dreamed about Claire, Sun made a deal with Charles Whitmore, and Jack visited the coffin again, and Ben showed up and told him to go back. Told him all 6 of the survivors, plus Jeremy, must go back. And Jeremy was John all along. Yeah. Both Jeremy Bentham and John Locke are names of great philosophers. And they're the same person. It is a great ending in my opinion. Something that I've been waiting for 4 seasons finally came true, and it feels like the end of the show technically, but then there's this cliffhanger which then causes what's supposed to be tied end to be a lose end again, and I have no idea how will season 5 move forward. It's either going to be super interesting or somewhat boring. Also, I'm a little upset because I knew that Jeremy Bentham is John Locke because of one of the thumbnails of this Watch Mojo video, top 10 most insane lost moments. Like, Watch Mojo just spoiled it for me. That's kind of stupid. But still, great twist. Overall, Lost Season 4 is fantastic as well. I don't think it's as good as the first 2 seasons. Maybe a little better than Season 3. Maybe not as good, because the Season 3 finale is freaking amazing. But still, this season is certainly more complex than any other seasons in the past. More adventurous and more head-scratching in an entertaining way. I'm thoroughly engaged by the flash forwards, and I'm super intrigued by the numerous Dharma stations and the Jacob storyline. The Rescuer storyline is also pretty good, but doesn't have an emotional depth and mystique to like other storylines. Also, if you're wondering about the Dharma stations, I'm going to try my best to list out all 9 of them because I'm a nerd. We have the Pearl, which is underneath the crashed airplane of Echo's brother. Not really Echo's brother, Echo's gang. We have the Swan, which is Desmond's hatch. We have the Arrow, which is inhabited by the tail section. We have the Flame, which is home to Mikhail, who died in season 3. We have the Staff, where Claire got checked and Claire got kidnapped by Ethan. And then we have the Tempest, which is explored this season, where basically Charlotte and Daniel try to stop a poisonous gas from spreading. So we have the Tempest, and then that's 6. And then we have the 7th one, the Orchid, which is I'm not gonna spoil it. And so we have 2 stations left to explore, and that is the Lamppost and the Hydra, and I'm looking forward to that. This season also has a couple of slow, boring episodes, but it also has a handful of highlights like the Constant, which can actually work as a full movie on its own because it has such a great premise and it's entertaining from start to finish. This season also managed to bring us closer to the answer while blurring the lines between living and dying, also between reality and something else, and I really like that. I love the ending, and I have zero clue how will the show move on. My favorite is episode 5, The Constant, and my least favorite is episode 6, The Other Woman. I'm saying Lost Season 4 is mind-blowing, and I'm giving it a strong 8 out of 10. So, have you watched Lost Season 4 from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.